Hello. In this video, we are actually going to use all of the same client code here, but instead of on the server storing the key and value pair in an array, we are going to use a database. So in this case, we're going to use MongoDB, and we use a database because, first of all, it allows you to save stuff over time if the server gets restarted, if your server code crashes, you're able to have everything stored in the database and easily retrieve it. It's also a lot better. The using an array doesn't scale very well when you are trying to store the information. So as I said, all of the client code here is the same, and what we need to do is we're going to use the MongoDB package. This is the latest version as of the recording of this video, and we simply add this to our package.json, and then you just rerun npm install as you saw in the last video, and this will bring that package down for you. Next, I separated out the code for MongoDB into a separate file, and that's my MongoDB.js. So in order to bring that in, I add this require statement. Other than that, the changes to this file are not very significant. So we simply changed to using my MongoDB that we brought in here, and for the saving, and as well for when we are doing the get. Otherwise, this is very similar to all the code we saw in the last video. So to look at the real change, that will be right here. So we are using MongoDB. In this case, MongoDB is actually particularly well suited for working with Node.js. It stores JSON objects very well, and it's very easy to interact with. Some nice things about MongoDB, or it could be a positive, could be a negative, is that it's as you are working, you'll see here that I don't have any databases, just the local database, but we don't need to set up the database, set up a table specifying how the objects we're going to insert are going to look. We simply just start using MongoDB, and we'll see that it automatically creates everything we need. So that's good because it's flexible, but it also means that if we have an error in our program code, we could easily insert something that isn't checked against any specifications. So within this file here, first thing we need to do is create a connection string. So we've got, this is just the format that MongoDB expects. I'm running the server on my local machine, localhost, which is at that IP address. This is the default port that MongoDB is available on, and this is what I'm going to call my database. And as we see over here, that database doesn't yet exist, but MongoDB will create it as soon as we insert something into it. And I'm not using any username or password in my case. You can take a look at the textbook for an example of using a username and password. And so we have two functions here, the save function and the get function. In the save function, or actually they both start off in the same way. We first create a connection to MongoDB, so we connect our server to the database. If there's an error, we're just going to throw it so that it can be dealt with some other program code. The next thing we do is this is where we store. So in MongoDB, you have collections, just as in other databases, you might have tables. In collection is just a grouping of similar objects. So that's, in our case, the key value pairs. And if I have an error, I'm going to close my connection to the database. You always want to close the connection before you exit the program. That just uses resources appropriately. Then I'm going to display it to the log and close the connection and call the callback, which will then send this message to the front end here. So I'm going to save this value, and we see save pair to storage. The same value is right there. We can also take a look here, and we can see that MongoDB automatically created that database. The next is we want to retrieve. So everything else is fairly similar here. We get the connection, we get the collection of pairs. Next thing we do is we set up a JSON object that's going to be how we're searching. So we want to match any object that has the same key as the one that we're specifying in our client here. We then use the find command on the collection with our query. So we want to match any objects that have a key matching this key in our client. Same thing, if there's an error, we're going to close the connection, throw the error. And then once we have our result, we're just going to have result.next. So result would normally contain a whole bunch of matches. In our case, we know that there's just one object matching this key. We only want the first one. We don't care if there's any other ones that have the same key. So we just do result.next, and that will send the pair to this function. If there's an error, there isn't a pair, so we were expecting something. If there wasn't one, we're just going to call that callback. So for example here, and we'll get that key not found, and that's specified in the that message is specified in our server .js. And otherwise, we're going to log it to the console, close our connection, and send back the value. So this is a key that we know, and successfully found test, which is the value that I put in. And there you are. That's just a quick example of using MongoDB to store and retrieve data over the long term. Good luck.